Hello and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Intimacy Podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Greer, Christos, and it's our absolute pleasure to be speaking with you today on a really important topic that affects literally all couples. So we're just fresh off the back of a couples workshop that we ran last weekend. Tell us a little bit about that workshop, babe.
So we call our in-person workshops Connected, and this was volume 2, meaning...
3? Oh, well, yeah.
No, it was volume 2.
It was.
Third time we've run the Connected workshop.
It was.
We did this one on co-regulation. So it was showing couples, creating the space, giving them the practices and the understanding of the importance and how to co-regulate, meaning teaching our bodies, reminding our bodies that we're safe with this person.
Yeah, and that link of safety and the sex is a big one.
Yeah. And we've touched on safety a lot over the last few podcasts. And obviously when it comes to sexual intimacy, it's incredibly important. In fact, it is the foundation, and we will address that to some degree in this podcast. However, we're not going to just be rehashing a lot of what we've gone over already. And if you haven't already, we've got the Start with Safety free training on our website. So remember that's there. Go grab that. It is foundational. And obviously, when it comes to sexual intimacy, we need to feel safe with the person to open to them. So that's pretty obvious. However, there's a lot of other nuances and dimensions and complexities that lead to couples feeling like housemates rather than lovers.
Absolutely. And that dynamic of housemates rather than lovers is one of the core reasons why couples come to us, as well as a lack of connection, feeling understood, feeling on the same page, and a lack of sex, a lack of chemistry, and wanting to work in that area. So we're going to start by exploring what it looks like to feel like housemates rather than lovers. And rather than naming it you're either housemates or you're lovers, we want to talk about it as a spectrum, because you can feel like housemates in different ways and it looks different depending on what's happening within your relationship.
Yeah, and so on one end of the spectrum, we've got the vanilla, which is very safe. It's very functional, but the sexual intimacy is becoming quite stagnant, quite stale, repetitive, bland. The land of bland. And if a couple is in that place, then that's actually a relatively easy fix because they've got the safety established. Okay, a lot of the groundwork has been laid. And then coming into the midpoint of the spectrum, we've got kind of the co-managers, where both individuals within the coupleship relationship are quite often in their masculine, meaning their mode of being is very doing oriented. It's very results driven. It values achievement over connection, for instance.
Yeah, and it's constantly putting out fires, as they might go out for a date or go and do something together, but they're talking about the kids, they're talking about work, they're talking about house, and then let's go out for dinner so that we can organise the renovation, rather than let's go out for dinner and have a really nice time together where we're actually going deeper into another.
And we did do a whole podcast just on that dynamic alone. You can go check that out. It's why staying busy gets in the way of intimacy. And then on the higher end of the spectrum, this is the most turbulent. Like, there is conflict. There is a high amount of turbulence. And for a couple, it makes complete sense that their sexuality and sexual intimacy is eroding or has eroded, because the safety piece is really taking a hit. And we're going to be going into that a lot.
Yeah, and if I was to give that an ice cream flavour, it'd be the Rocky Road. It's like chunks. They're not only co-managing life, but it's like it feels chunky. It's like, okay, you do that, I'll do that, and there's not a sense of real synergy, and it can also look like resentment, frustration, a lot of unspoken things building up, and so we're going to go into that.
Yeah, exactly. And one of our primary teachers and mentors, Michaela Boehm, she shares that, for a couple, they need a high degree of sameness, being on the same page, shared values, equality, some shared beliefs, shared agreements to be functional. That's the foundations. And then, for long-term sustainability and longevity, to keep things alive, we've got to create newness and novelty. Mm-hmm. But quite often couples will create novelty and newness to try fix a sameness problem. Mm-hmm. And it's either only temporary. It's either only temporary or it actually makes things worse.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So as we were preparing for this podcast and we were talking about those different aspects and degrees of housemates, where we've got the vanilla and the rocky road, as we were describing it, I saw this plane analogy, and that if we look at the rocky road being the cargo, traveling in cargo, that middle ground is like a cheap economy Jetstar international flight. You've got the vanilla, which is a premium economy. There's a bit of space, you're pretty comfortable, but you're still not in the business class. And where we want to guide you today is give you a sense of what it can look like when you're in business class, let alone when you get to first class. And as a bit of a drop of inspiration, in that first class, a long-term monogamous relationship has such when one is like really enriched and you're actually traveling in first class, there's such a set foundation of safety, and there's such a clear boundary around the relationship, and that it actually becomes very expansive, and it makes it very free and safe to explore different aspects of one another. This is the land where different flavors, where different archetypes can come through in your lovemaking, and you can be making love, and there's like this whole, whether it's the dirty slut archetype, whether it's the shy virgin, whether it's the big daddy energy, which we'll speak about in the next podcast. But there's all this different flavor, and everything is welcomed, and that's where the excitement and the newness comes in, because we're continually going in deep and making it safe for these new energies to come through.
Yeah, and emphasis on going in deep, because we're going to continue to rehash this idea and this concept that for couples to grow and develop within this space, within this dimension of their relationship, it requires to stop relating from the surface level. It requires vulnerability. Mm-hmm. It requires depth. Mm-hmm. And quite often couples are either not knowing how to do that, or they're simply unaware that that's what's missing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you happy if I keep going it down? Yeah. So when we move into the business class, that's where we might start to look at understanding more about masculine and feminine energies, how polarity works, the actual chemistry of sex. And, so many people have had their sex education from school education in primary school and then porn. And that is such a limited worldview of what sex really can be. And so once you're in the business class, you're starting to, oh wow, there's this whole thing that I just didn't know, and there's a whole new world. I know when I first embarked, and
we embarked on it.
I was going to say, I had the joy of embarking on that with you. This whole other universe became available that I was so used to being in the cargo, the economy, or the premium economy. I just never dreamt that I could actually travel business class. I didn't think that was for me.
Yeah.
And yet. Yeah. So when we look at the premium economy, what that can look like is, again, it's that vanilla. There's some comfort, there's safety, but it most likely lacks a real depth of intimacy. So it might mean that you're having sex, but it doesn't necessarily really feel like making love, even though you love this person. Perhaps you're having sex, but it's at nighttime with the lights off, or if it's in daytime, you're not looking at one another in the eye. There's a lack of like real willingness to see and slow down and feel, and so that limits the amount of depth that you can have together as a couple. It also may mean that sex is something that or it's a conversation that you need to kind of, or you want to go deeper into, but it's not a big enough pain point and it feels a bit scary to talk about. So perhaps you speak about it when you're drunk or when you're on substances, but then the next day it just gets left. Or perhaps one partner is wanting to lead that area and grow, but the other one's not quite ready, and so you just kind of push it away so as not to create the friction. And then if we bring it back into regular economy, where you're just co-managing, where you're addressing life, you might go and do something as a couple. Maybe you even go on a family holiday, but again, the whole holidays is talking about home or having little moments of relaxation and not really going deeper. And again, this is where sex will often really drop down in the priority. It's often where we get caught in that chicken and egg situation where the woman wants to feel deeply connected in order to have sex. The men want sex in order to feel connected, and so it can come into this crossroads or stalemate situation. No one's needs or deeper desires are being fulfilled. And to be honest, I think a lot of people really, and I know I was in that situation in a previous time in my life where I just dimmed down my desire. I made it less important and I didn't really allow myself to feel it, or if I did feel it, I did it with myself behind closed doors with a kind of a shame thing happening and like hiding in secret. So there's a lot of secrecy, and not necessarily bad secrecy, but it's like it's really not a space where people can express what they're really wanting for fear of not having that being met, and also for fear of hurting their partner's feelings.
Yeah, and so then you got the cargo area where there's turbulence, there's fights, it's scary, vulnerability is mocked or belittled or dismissed, emotions fly off the handle, or there's just that dynamic of heightened emotion with severe withdrawal, and there's just no connection, no safety, and good luck having sex in that space.
Yeah, and if you do have sex, you might be drunk, or again, you can have sex and then afterwards there's a deep sense of disconnection, which is a really challenging space to be as well.
That's super damaging. When there's a self-abandonment in the pole, and there's a lot of compassion here, there's no judgment, a lot of compassion, but just know that self-abandonment, having sex just to tick something off or to make the other person happy, comes at a huge cost.
And to be honest, we've done that once or twice with one another. One of us has wanted sex and the other one, it hasn't really been their truth, but we've kind of gone along with it. And
people pleased.
Yeah, we've people pleased, and we've wanted to meet that need, and we've both sensed it straight away afterwards. And it's from doing that, I think it was once to each other, and then realising, okay, we made that commitment not to do that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there was... it was really hurtful, wasn't it? For both of us.
It was.
Yeah. Great. So that's the spectrum, and hopefully you can identify yourself somewhere on that spectrum. And if you're on this journey with us, let's get to business and first class, because we can tell you it's very juicy. It's very, very rewarding.
Very nice.
It's very
nice.
Very nourishing. And so I think it's really important that we dive in and unpack, what I mentioned earlier, that happens kind of around the midpoint of that spectrum, with both people within the relationship stuck in that doing mode of being very busy, right? Busyness, taking care of work, family, kids. Look, this is the reality of life. There's no judgment. It's a reality that couples get stuck in, and there's a cost and a consequence, and we just want to explicitly name this, that often there's seasons of life where this is required of us, and just because it's required of us doesn't mean that life has to be this way or is always going to be this way. It's very easy to slip into a comfortable routine and pattern, and then that just becomes the norm. And things will just get swept under the carpet, needs will be dismissed or diminished or minimized, and it comes with a cost.
Yeah, and I also want to say that remember that a season, if we look at nature, seasons last for 3 months. They don't last for a decade. So, yes, there is a reality of having young kids and it's intense for a good solid 10 years, right? But that doesn't mean that you need to put your sex life on hold for 10 years. And if you do, there's a very large chance that that could have very negative consequences. Not only it can have really bad long-term implications, but you miss out on so much that intimate relationship has to offer. Relationships are challenging, and if we're not getting the juiciness, yumminess from it, then that makes it really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And most importantly, and this is something we said in our co-regulation workshop on the weekend, is we want our relationship to build our capacity to deal with the challenges of life. And sexual intimacy, when done consciously and lovingly, can fill our cup. It can give us the juice, the vitality, the juju to handle the demands and to build our capacity to have the resilience to deal with the demands of life.
Absolutely. And that's where we're getting into the business first class. And again, at that opposite spectrum, sex feels like another thing to do. And I know as a woman, I'll just speak to it as a woman that, there's kids, and I know men have this too, but this is speaking from a woman in a woman's body. If I'm focusing on raising the kids, work, the house, family, stuff going on my own thing, trying to stay healthy, trying to catch up with girlfriends every now and then, the last thing I want is to have a partner who feels needy and wanting something else of me. And that's where and you can speak to what it is to have, feeling needy as a man, but it creates a dynamic of like, God, there's someone else who I have to give to, who I have to put out to. And I remember a very distinct conversation I had with a woman. It was about 15 years ago now, and she'd been married for a long time. She said, oh, well, yeah, he wanted sex. So I ticked that off the list. And it was really this sense of like, it's just something I have to do as part of like my marital duties. And that is, again, without judgment, it's a real shame, without wanting to evoke shame, but it's there's something there that is really missing, and there's an opportunity for experiences of deep nourishment and deep receptivity. And so, do you want to speak to a little bit about the experience of neediness of man?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. But I think where I want to go to is I want to speak to the man's perspective of what can arise when the woman is in that doing mode, right? When she is hyper busy and the priorities are on the kids, the home, work, and then even to the friends, it can be like, well, what about me? Like, where am I on the priority list? And that can be hurtful. And then often, depending on the man, his conditioning, it can go one of two ways. One, he can just get resentful and he'll try to like retaliate and just probably get a bit passive aggressive. Or when she comes in to initiate sex and she's ready, he's like, well, why should I be ready for you? Like, and that resentment build up creates a real disconnect. The other way it can go is, because we as men in this current society are so conditioned that we are valued for what we do, then quite often the man will, see the woman in kind of boss babe mode and think that he's got to compete with that. And that if he provides more, if he can do more, then he'll get the attention, the praise, the admiration, and eventually sex that he's really desiring and craving. And so then you've got two people in that masculine mode. He's probably going to burn out trying to prove himself. She's also in that masculine. And when we talk about the masculine here, and we're going to go into that in the next podcast, we're talking about that doing mode of being.
I think what often happens in that situation is that the man's in his doing and the woman's in her doing, and so by the time they do get to bed at the end of the day, they both just need to collapse into their feminine, and no one has the energy to initiate, no one has the energy to lead, understandably so.
And so while we're talking about, this masculine, feminine kind of energy, which is really important when we're talking about sex, it's important to bring up the idea and concept of patriarchy and how influential and impactful this is on couples' sex lives, because we're still swimming in the waters of patriarchy. Yes, we're starting to evolve out of it, and thank goodness for that. But our current society, that its foundations are within a patriarchal consciousness, it's no wonder we're all so caught up in doing and busyness and achievement oriented, because that is the masculine dominated consciousness. Now, we all, men and women, have both masculine and feminine energies, so that's why a woman can display masculine behaviors, traits and qualities. And we were on a call with a couple the other day, and we were explaining this concept, and I said, think about Gina Reinhardt. Like, that's a woman that totally embodies patriarchy. Okay, so I know there's a lot of men out there that bump up against resistance when that term is used, and I understand, I get it. We don't want to blame men for the state of the world. It's more got to do with an imbalance within our consciousness and psyche. Now, as we've just alluded to, one of the impacts of us being masculine dominated within our energy is the lack of feminine, right? And as Greer mentioned earlier, pornography has had a massive impact on our conditioning around what sex is, how it looks like, what connected, passionate and sex should be like, when in reality pornography 98% of the time displays a very male-centric, dominant, patriarchal sexual experience. It quite often is devoid of a feminine flavor and feel, meaning that there's actual empathy and heart connection. It's slower, more attuned, there's more feeling, right? A reason so many couples, and particularly when they're in this doing mode, also their sex is going to be patriarchal, meaning that it's performance based, it's goal oriented, it's about getting to the orgasm, it's just getting from A to B, there's no slowing down, there's no attunement. And that's another reason why sex can leave a couple feeling devoid or less connected than when they started, because there hasn't actually been any genuine connection being a more feminine value. So yeah, that's being in our doing nature keeps us in a surface level way of relating, because it's all about logistics, results that appear externally, and then that expresses sexually. So it becomes performance oriented, goal oriented, a lack of attunement, and quite often like not very nourishing, and leaving depletion more than an actual fulfillment.
Absolutely. And when you were talking about when you spoke of porn and what that shows, and this isn't, I think it's important to just name that we're not wanting to have a moral debate over whether porn is good or bad. That is something for a couple to discuss and to genuinely
decide for themselves.
Yeah, honest. So we're not talking about you should or shouldn't have porn. What we're showing is that what is shown in porn is not attuned to how a woman's body operates. We have a different system. And even if I think to like Hollywood movies and the sex scenes of like, even if it's so-called passionate sex scene, I can't remember which movie it is, but it's an Angelina Jolie clip, and I remember she's like thrown up against the wall and he like goes inside, and within seconds she's in this incredible
straight away. Sure.
It's no, that's not how it works. I mean, maybe you're watching this and you're a woman, that is what works, but majority of women take a long time, right? We know this, men put down.
Yeah.
Women are like this. So there's this stronger build. And so, again, it can also, I know for me, prior to our relationship, I made myself wrong for not being able to do like they do in the movies, and, Angelina Jolie can do, why can't I do it? Obviously, consciously, I know it's a movie and it's not real, but it brought a lot of shame, a lot of comparison, and it's been such a beautiful journey to travel this together and discover how we work as a...
Well, it's been a synergistic journey because, you've had to learn more about your body as woman, and it's underpinned, your in-body and whole women's work. It's just as you have learned about your body and what it means to be woman, I've come along with you on that journey. It's been beautiful. Yeah. And there's been so much of my wiring and conditioning that I've had to undo and repattern because, I was conditioned to think that the wild, intense, passionate was how you satisfy a woman. That's the message I got.
Yeah. And of course, there is so much intimacy that is created and cultivated by going on that journey together.
Yeah.
And by me gradually, slowly, surely learning how to ask for what I want, learning how to direct, and you've been so good at teaching me. So this is, again, it's not just the amazing sex, it's not even the destination of having a fulfilling sex life, it's the journey of what that requires in order to have that. And we did the maths one day of how many times we've been together, almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
And we did the maths and we're like, oh my God, we've had sex like thousands of times.
Yeah.
And we're still continuing to have new experiences, deeper experience, higher experiences, different archetypes coming, different flavors coming in, and we've remained monogamous. And it's because of the safety. So as I said, that our relationship, because it's not just this small defined thing, there's so much within it. There's so many aspects of ourselves that we can explore, and you've helped me discover aspects of myself from the safety that you bring. It's like you hold this space, and from that I can open and experience new dimensions of myself and what it is to be a woman.
Yeah.
And as I bring that in and allow that in, that creates like that your presence and your witnessing of that. And this is the deeper tantric work and what it really looks like above masculine and feminine. So it's amazing.
And I think it's really important that we name here that we have had moments and seasons where it has got a bit vanilla for us. It had started to feel a bit repetitive. And I named to Greer, like, I'm wanting newness. I'm wanting a flavor. I'm wanting something different. And that was a really potent, powerful conversation. And it led to these explorations of different aspects. When Greer talks about flavors, she's talking about different aspects of her own feminine nature. And we're going to dive into that in the next podcast. But I just wanted to name that, we've been at that level where it started to feel repetitive and like get a bit stagnant, and we've moved through it
because it's been named very quickly. And like literally.
Oh, look,
How long do you think that you was?
A week or two, which I guess for couples is probably pretty quick.
It is, And we've also, and this is, I wouldn't expect, and I don't necessarily recommend you do this.
I know where you're going, and I'm just going to second. I don't recommend it either.
There's been twice? Has it been twice?
2 or 3 times, I think.
2 or 3 times that Aaron has come to me and said,
babe, I'm not feeling attracted to you right now. And I didn't put it that bluntly.
No, but you've let me know. And the first time it happened, it was quite a journey within my inner psyche. I mean, it was and I want to preface that Aaron is the man of deep truth and deep love. And so I knew it had no impact on his love for me. And it's because of his love and his respect for me. And you expressed that you felt guilt and shame. I don't want to be feeling like this, but this is what's real for me. And I just need to name it because I know that in naming it, it cleared very quickly.
Yeah. And I would say this is a practice to go from business class to first class.
Yes. Don't do it unless you've got that safety. You've really worked on the things. Women, you need to be in your body and whole. But the gift of that, and this is another example of where that intimacy and why the container of the relationship gets so expansive, is because in you sharing that, you're actually showing me that you trust me, that I can handle your truth. And the gift of that is I had to come deep into my enoughness. Who am I if my husband doesn't find me attractive? Am I enough? Am I beautiful enough within myself? Can I be a living sensual being just within myself? And it was beautiful because that required me to come into that in a more fuller expression.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, my half of that experience was as soon as I named it, and I just felt like the awkwardness and the guilt and held you through your process, it just lifted. It was gone. And it was like once I gave myself permission to speak that and it was held and we traversed it, it was like, wow, did the attraction just go next level?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is an advanced practice.
Yeah, and when I got honest with myself, I knew that I had gone through periods of not finding you very attractive either. But I didn't dare say it because I didn't want to hurt your feelings. Because I would never say that. So now I can.
And it's important to name why I did say that is because it'd been sitting with me for like a week or so, and we have such a baseline within our relationship of radical openness, authenticity, and truth. And I could feel that I wasn't fully opening to you because I was holding this bit, this little bit of data back, and that was why I needed to say it, was so that I wouldn't be reserving a part of myself.
Yeah, and I think this is a really nice thread into resentment. And one of the other core reasons, if we go back into that cattle class, if we're moving from basic Jetstar long haul flight in economy down into cattle class, one of the most common symptoms of that is resentment. And the further you go into the cargo ship, the more resentment there is.
Yeah, because here's the truth. You cannot desire someone you resent.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, desire is a towards energy. I'm intrigued, I'm curious. Resentment,
yeah,
it's a totally different, it's an opposite effect. And so if I'm feeling resentful to my partner, it's a push away. It's a I'm not letting you in. So it's no wonder that as the resentment builds, and remembering resentment sometimes is a huge deal, but most often it's these little things. It's this me going in to go for cuddle and you not sensing it, so me turning away.
Yeah, or me sharing something vulnerable and it gets dismissed or belittled.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's moments where there's been attempts at connection and it hasn't landed, and that hasn't been acknowledged or repaired. And
the other way that I see with clients that is when there's so much tagging of the kids and there's so much there's so much in that co-management phase, that rather than really feel like there's a team and there's this sense of usness and we're doing it together, it's okay, you do that, I'll do that. You do that, okay, you have a break, I'll have a break. And those needs for breaks get longer and longer. So people need bigger blocks of time away, which means that when partner A comes back, by the time partner A comes back, partner B is just exhausted. And I might even get jealous about partner A coming in because they're looking all good. It's like, oh, great, I'm glad you had a good time because I've been dealing with X, Y, Z. So here you go, you have that. And not only does that... not only is that a nice feeling for either partner to have, but it will I know for you, you've had time where you've been feeling good and then you've come in and you've seen me and I'm exhausted, and it really actually takes away from what you had. So maybe you got that, but all of a sudden you come in, you see me and it's all gone. So that 3 hours that you had wasn't even worth it. No. And anything, now you've got to pick up all the stuff that's on the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was working with a woman... I work with her one-on-one, and we were talking about this just in the last week, and I was just so strongly encouraging her that when we've got young kids and we have a big life, and everyone I know has a really busy life, even those without young kids, they're having to service their mortgage and they want to drop work but they can't because of financial requirements. Parents getting older, everyone has a lot of stuff on. And it's not always, in fact, it's hardly ever feasible to have regular big chunks of time but having a daily practice, a daily moment where you know, okay, from 6 till 6:30 in the morning, perhaps it's like 8 to 8:15 at night, just having a window of time. And if 6 to 6:30 for some reason it doesn't work, then you get it 9 to 9:30. But you have a daily practice of some way of nurturing yourself. It doesn't have to be the same practice every day, but there's some kind of agreement so that our baseline, our animal body, we know that, okay, every day there's a period in the day where I get to recalibrate. And it literally could be 5 minutes, or it could be just micro pauses, having a pause in between dropping the kids off and starting work. So it's so important, and one of the reasons why it's important is because it enables, I'll speak to the woman again, just have these continual little top-ups so that I can come back into realizing how tired I am, how exhausted I am, or perhaps how energized I am, so that I can, if you ask me, oh babe, do you mind yada yada, I can be honest with what my capacity, rather than saying, yeah, that's fine, and then you going, and then me realizing how tired I am. And again, that's where resentment can build.
I've seen a lot of women who take care of everyone else just build up layers of resentment. And the analogy that comes to mind is, if you think about a river, resentments build up just like sediment on the bottom of that riverbed, and the river can still flow. It looks good from the outside, but underneath that murkiness is just building and building and building until the river becomes quite diluted and polluted by this resentment. And resentment will pollute, it will corrode any relationship in any context.
Yeah, and not only that, when there's that build up in the river, if something then big does come in, something, whether it's a sickness, an affair, financial challenge, like it's something really big come in from the external and it just drops into the river, if there's already all that build up, it becomes a shit show.
Yeah. And so something I want to bring into this conversation around resentment, because we've spoken a lot about, the women's resentment. So many men get resentful when their women don't open to them and they take it personally. And something I want to identify and name explicitly is how so many women, and it hurts me to say, have their own history with sexual trauma. And so you've got to realize, brother, that you're in relationship not just with her as she is today, but also that history where she wasn't treated right, history where her boundaries were violated. And it's our role as men to be that safety so that she can learn to open, learn to trust man and the masculine again, because it's a big deal to allow a man in. Wouldn't you agree, babe? This is, I think, because of our conditioning, men really, look, I'll speak personally rather than making generalizations, but look, I think I totally undervalued and not really thought about the significance of being penetrated. Like, it's big, and men need to treat that with reverence and care. And part of that care is creating the emotional safety and connection. As Greer said earlier, majority of women need that emotional connection before opening and desiring sex. And they don't just turn on like we do. It's a slow build. And I think men need more education around women's erotic nature.
Yeah, and we will go more into that next time. And I do want to name that, again, unfortunately, it's a true tragedy just how many women, not just now, but across humanity, across lifetimes, have had what we call capital T trauma, and that's assault, rape, systemic childhood abuse, and that's devastating. It's devastating, and that must be addressed if the woman has had that, and the man. Many men have had it too. Far more than I realized. And I know for me, I didn't experience any of that capital T trauma. I experienced many, many compounding moments that were traumatic for me that over time compounded prior to meeting you into this spiral of shame, of shutdown, of numbness, of avoidance, of secrecy, of deeply fearing that there was something wrong with me. And it took immense courage for me to open to you and in the depth of which I have. And that's an example where the safety in the relationship is it's an absolute requirement. There are some of the things that I shared with you that I'd never shared before, and it's that cycle between risk and safety. So I started off sharing some things, you showed me you could hold it, I learned to share a bit more, you hold that, and so over time it kind of dovetails into me being able to trust you with everything, and you've shown me that you can hold that. And again, because of that safety, then that makes it safe for me to open. And in terms of the penetration, it's, and also getting back to like when a woman feels like she has to put out, or like I've got so much to do and now you want sex. I know that we have spoken about, like, there's been times where you've wanted sex and you feel like you've been wanting to give it to me, not in the sense I want to give it to you, but like you just want to give me a love. Whereas if I'm at capacity, the thought, the energetics of having something else like actually physically come into me, it feels like too much. Not only that, if we're looking at the act of penetration of penis entering a vagina, yes, it's going in, you're giving, but then you take. And so the energy can feel very much like not receiving. It can feel like giving. And I also want to name just how important, for those who don't know, you know, if you have had sex, you have made love, and hopefully it's been a really lovely experience, it's so important that that withdrawal will be very, very gentle, because just as a woman takes a while to open, it also to just kind of come out like that it's jarring to her, and that's going to create an impact in her body. It's going to create a subtle freeze. And again, this is how unconsciously resentment can build. If I'm having sex with a man, my partner, maybe he's my husband, and we have sex and it's finished, he's just gone, unconsciously that my body is learning that that's not safe.
Yeah. Beautiful. And look, this conversation has been kind of woman-centric, and I think that's actually really essential, given that we're swimming in the waters of patriarchy. And again, you know, to speak to men and the challenges that men face, and this topic of sexuality, you cannot speak about the challenges of sexuality without addressing shame. Shame underpins so much sexual dysfunction. Shame is the belief there's something wrong with me, I'm not enough,
I'm too much,
I'm not man enough, I'm not woman enough. This sense of lack. And so often we will try to compensate for this internal lack by getting something outside of us. And this is where the conversation around neediness that you pinned earlier becomes really important, because look, I have been there. I have been a needy boy, and I couldn't understand it at the time. Like my early teenage relationships, I was super needy. I just thought I was being really loving. But what I didn't see was how smothering I was and how repelling that was, and it created rejection. That rejection created a big, deep heartbreaks, and me making a soul contract to myself to close down my heart. And I stayed single for nearly 9 years. And my agreement and vow to myself was I was staying single until I met the person I was going to really commit to. However, really underneath that was I didn't understand women. I didn't get it. I didn't get how me just wanting to pour my love, and you know, this is kind of the purity underneath the wound, is that underneath the neediness there is a purity. Many men want to devote themselves and pour their love into a woman. what gets entangled and enmeshed in that is this shame. And that shame can come about from so many different ways. It can start right at birth, a traumatic birth of, and this is my own experience as well, having the cord cut too soon, getting rushed to emergency, and that longing to return to mother, who is that first symbol of the feminine. And then we can also have shame around our penis, whether it was shamed externally or we were circumcised. We can hold shame there. We can hold shame around our bodies because of societal conditioning. We're shown images of sports athletes or bodybuilders on magazines as like, this is what a masculine man is. And so there's shame in that way. There's shame in we're not providing enough, we can't do enough. And so all of this shame we want to compensate for. And a woman will pick up on that. And when a man has this neediness and he is longing to feel whole and enough again through woman, she gets repelled by it. She can sense it. It's not magnetic because it's the mother. It feels like it's a boyish. It's not mature. It's not grounded. And she picks up on it as boyish, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was like so listening to you.
I was waiting. I gave you the space to go in. I was like, it's.
I know. I was just being so receptive. For once, I wasn't jumping in. Like, it is. That's right. It's the boy energy, which, and again, we'll get into this more because we've been exploring that as the energetics of Big Daddy energy, and it's where the woman just feels so taken care of. It's like, yeah. So, ooh la la.
Stay focused, please.
I am. So the little boy energy, where the woman becomes the mother. It's God, someone else to take care of, someone else's needs to meet, someone else I have to give to, and it is the opposite. And again, that smothering energy will be, I've got to protect myself and cower in. And we've even talked about at times when you've kissed me, it's been like so passionate that I've had to well, babe, it's like you're squashing a flower. It's like, I'm not a man. So
the fire analogy, right? It can burn. That passionate fire can be overwhelming.
Yeah, and so again, it's okay to have that fire energy, but the woman needs time to kind of come in and meet that. If you just come in with that, it's too much. It's going to squash. Yeah.
And look, the reality is, and we probably will at some stage do a whole podcast on shame and its impact on relationships because it is so crucial and influential. And we hope and trust that we've given you guys, the listeners, a broad spectrum and understanding of what creates this dynamic of couples falling into housemates rather than lovers. Because the sex and the lack of it is more a symptom of deeper unmet needs, deeper resentments or deeper core wounds that haven't been addressed. When couples come to us and they have this problem, we see it as the presenting problem. And it's part of our role to start to unpack and identify what are the actual underlying dynamics that's making the sex difficult or non-existent.
And it's important to note that if a couple has had that eroticism before, if you started off and the relationship was red hot and it's just gone over time, then that is a very workable dynamic to come back and cultivate that. If a couple has never actually really had that, that is a different body of work and it requires a different pathway. So it's a different thing, but really, and doesn't mean that it's not impossible. It could just be that you actually need to learn the skills. So, if you had your sex education from school and porn, it's no wonder that it wasn't there in the first place. And you can learn, but it's a different journey. And if you've had it before, you can get it back.
And look, the reality is sex is a really vulnerable act. We're bare naked. We're revealing all of ourselves. And that vulnerability needs to be met with care, understanding, empathy, and compassion. And so if safety is missing, that vulnerability is not going to be handled well. So if you're a couple and you recognize that if you're on this plane, on this journey, you're in the cargo area and things are really on the rocky road, as Greer said, then our invitation for you is to check out our free online training. It's on our website. It's called Start With Safety.
And if you recognize yourself more as a couple who are in that premium economy vanilla space and you actually like the idea of flying a bit of business and moving towards into first class, then we encourage you to check out our Awakened Intimacy program. It's a really powerful 8-week program. You work with us 2-on-2 over 8 weeks. You can find out more on the services tab on our website. And it's what makes it so powerful and why it's such a powerful pathway to come into that sexual chemistry is because it creates a sense of growth and expansion and newness. And that is one of the core pillars of reinvigorating sexual chemistry in long-term relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, sex is a symptom. And if it's repetitive, if it's vanilla, it's because there's a lack of growth. You're stuck in patterns, stuck in the same cycle. And you can also go depth, start to meet each other at these deeper places. You know, that is intimacy, and it's what we're so passionate about, supporting couples in learning the skills and the art of meeting one another, holding one another in these deeper, vulnerable places.
So that wraps up this episode of the podcast. We will be coming in next time and focusing more around some of the teachings around sexual chemistry and polarity, which should be fun.
Yeah, get ready. Strap yourself in. It's going to be juicy.
Ooh la la.
All right, thank you.